Hey, everybody. Welcome to our GoWP Expert Series. We are here today with Joe Casabona. Really happy to have him. Hey, Joe, how's it going?
Very, very well. How are you?
I'm good. I am currently broadcasting from Spain, so I'm over here visiting my in-laws. And I'm noticing that my internet is a little choppy, so I apologize for the frozen choppiness of my video feed. But I'll do my spiel first and pass it over to you, Joe. So if you're here watching, make sure to say hi in the chat. We're live on Facebook, we're live on Twitter, we're live on LinkedIn, we're live on Joe's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn.
YouTube. YouTube.
YouTube, of course, YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes, and we're live on YouTube too. So if
Yeah.
you're here, say hi. We should be able to see those chats. And I just want to say a couple words about GoWP for anyone who may not be fully familiar with us. So I'm Emily. I'm from the GoWP team. And at GoWP, we like to say that we create happiness for digital agencies and help them to become more profitable. So whether you're looking to grow your team with a developer, a copywriter, designer, virtual assistant, or you're interested in outsourcing services so you can focus on growth, we've got you covered. We've also built the digital agency owners community over on Facebook. It's an active community of over 2,000 agency owners where we hold regular group calls like this, or regular group calls, webinars, and expert series sessions like this one. And just great, it's a great group of people. So if you're not a member over there, highly recommend you joining us. That's the GoWP Digital Agency Owners Group. And I'll put that link in the chat once I'm done talking. If you have any questions about partnering with GoWP and how we can help your agency, feel free to reach out in the Facebook group, gowp.com. Emily at gowp.com is my email. You can reach me there. And yeah, happy to have that conversation. So let's get to why we're here today, and that is Joe Casabona. If you're in our community already, you know Joe. He's everyone's favorite podcast expert, automation expert. He can save you an hour of time in your day with about a 10-minute conversation. He'll give you about 10 tips and tools and hacks that you can apply right away. So we love having him as one of our experts. And I think that's kind of the topic we're going to be covering today. So 5 things I believe that you can take off your plate today with Zapier. And can't wait to hear it. I am a Zapier fan, so I'm really excited to see what you've got going on, Joe. So over to you.
All right. Thanks, Emily. I cheated a little bit because I have more than 5, and it might not just be Zapier, but it'll be mostly Zapier. It'll be Make and Zapier. It'll be great. So first, let's see. Y'all can see my screen here. Good. Facebook is not probably what you want to see. Um, I basically just asked ChatGPT, and that's the end of my talk. Lead generation and qualification, employee time tracking and payroll, things like that. These are all really generic, and I wasn't super happy with them. So instead, what I'm gonna do for you, dear listeners, dear watchers, is first of all, I am now in full screen mode, so I will not see questions or comments as they come up, but I'll be checking periodically, which you'll be able to tell because then you won't be able to see my slides anymore. But I'm first going to give you a pep talk about what automation is and why you can automate. Because I think people hear the term automation and get a little nervous, get worried, like, "Hey, I'm not a programmer. I don't think about automation or my workflows that way." And I'm here to tell you that you can do it. Everybody can do it. It's great. So we'll start there, and then I'll show you some automations. First, I want to tell you about a scene from a few weeks ago. I have 3 small children that you could see on the screen here. And this was a moment of calm in just a sea of chaos. My wife is a nurse. She works at least one weekend per month. And so on those weekends, it's me and the kids hanging out. And this was great. This was really lovely. It was a nice moment. But that moment, that nice moment in my head came crashing down because I realized at just again, perfect quiet, no chaos moment in the house. I realized that I forgot to send off my next podcast episode for edit so that it could be published on Monday. And this is really important because uh weird flex, I guess, but my podcast generates about $1,000 per episode in income. I had sponsors, I had to run those ads. And I got really worried. I started to panic a little bit like, "Oh, when am I going to figure out when I'm gonna actually ship this episode?" It's Saturday, my editor's not even gonna be here until Monday. Uh, Only 2 of the kids nap, and hopefully that's gonna be at the same time, but my oldest needs a lot of attention right now, especially because she has to split it. And so fast forward after lunch, I've got both littles down. I give my daughter the iPad for a minute, and I go to check, and, the episode's ready to go. Scheduled, edited, sponsors added. And what I forgot was I had set up an automation. I didn't forget I set up the automation, but I forgot that I moved the appropriate folders that kicked off all of these automations. That emailed my editor, and then he edited it on Monday, the week before. And then when he uploaded the final edit, my VA got an email saying, "Hey, this is ready for publish. Here are the sponsors. Here's the text." And I just kind of in a blur forgot that I had prepped that episode specifically. And so this is why I think everybody needs to automate, because your business is working for you when you're doing crucial things like spending time with your family or your friends, or you're not in front of your desk, or you're sleeping. I would love to be sleeping. All of my children slept poorly last night, which means I slept poorly last night. But thanks to my automations and delegations, but we're talking about the automations part. My episode got published. I got paid for those ad spots. Everything was great. So, uh, what I want to tell you today is that you can leverage the tools you have to make your life easier. It doesn't have to be about creating these complex Rube Goldberg machines, right? Yes, I've done that. I've been automating for a long. I was a software developer for most of my life before moving into podcasting and no code tools. So my brain thinks like that, but not everybody needs to do that. So let's first talk about automation. Automation is using tools to do things so we don't have to do them, right? Let's look at my Rube Goldberg machine really quick. I downloaded the files from my podcast. I added instructions into this folder, and I have an app called Hazel that watches for that instructions file. When it's there, it moves all of that stuff into Dropbox. Dropbox tells Airtable. Airtable emails my editor. A little chain reaction because I wrote some text. It's using tools to do things so we don't have to do them. You are already automating. Automatic bill pay. That is an automation, right? It's one of my favorite examples of automation because it's something that I was affected by not recently, over the pandemic. We had just moved into our new house, and as somebody who's rented its whole life, I didn't really understand how bills worked, like with a water bill. We got our water bill and our sewer bill at the same time. We paid one of them. They're both quarterly. They both are about the same. We paid one of them. We didn't pay the other one. Our water company did not tell us that we were late paying. They said that they put something on the door, but it's not very good and it usually flies away. To which I said, "Why do you use it then?" And so they shut off our water. I called. I raised the sink because I'm from New York and we do that very well. And they turned it back on immediately. And then I set up automatic bill pay. So if you're doing automatic bill pay, you're already automating. Stripe sending money to your bank account. If you've sold anything online, or if anybody has ever paid an invoice, you don't have to manually go to Stripe and move it, right? I mean, it's not PayPal. So automation, sending a PDF to someone who joins your mailing list, setting up an email responder, right? When someone emails you and you are on vacation or you're out of the office, them automatically getting an email saying, "Hey, I'm not here. I'll get back to you as soon as I can." That's a form of automation. So the highlight here is we want to minimize human input. This is the whole point of automation. So you don't want to try to automate your entire life. Actually, I'll cover these terms in a minute, but basically it's when something happens, do this thing, right? We have the trigger, which is the thing that kicks off the automation, and the actions that we want to happen. On the first of the month, pay my water bill, right? Or the first of the quarter, pay my water bill. So let's talk about getting into the automation mindset really quick. You can automate pretty much everything. I know because I've tried, but you shouldn't. Because there are some things that you will eventually need to intervene and you want to make sure that you do them, or maybe it's better as a delegation task. So, what should you automate? You should automate these 4 types of tasks. Common, easily repeatable, right? This is, again, paying the bill. When I move a folder into Dropbox, email my editor, right? I do that multiple times a week. It's very easily repeatable. It's basically the same email. Hey, there's a new episode ready for edit in the editing folder. Infrequent, high level of effort. So this is something that you may not do a lot, but it's something that takes a long time to context switch and get into. My favorite example of a task like this is when I book sponsors. I try to book sponsors at 3 to 6 months a clip, right? I try to sell 12 episodes at a time. And so I'm probably sending a few insertion orders every 3 months. Except I need to email the client and I need to write up the insertion order, and then they need to sign it, and then when they sign it, they get the invoice, and when the invoice is paid, then they get added and I get an email saying, "Hey, here's all the stuff I need." You can automate that, right? You use a tool like HelloSign. You'll have to fill in the dates, right? I haven't figured out a really good way to do well, I figured out a way to do that that hasn't proved to be worth the effort yet. But everything else, right? You upload the insertion order to or the contract to HelloSign or some other more affordable tool, right? That gets signed. When it is signed, you can have QuickBooks or FreshBooks or whatever send the invoice. When the invoice is paid, you can have Zapier send an email saying, "Hey, thanks so much for paying your invoice. Here's what I need now." An hour's worth of task over several days or weeks, right? That is automated. Specific time requirement is another one, right? So this is paying the bill or delivering a course or some other digital product, right? When someone buys it, they want it immediately. Someone signs up for your mailing list to get a freebie, you're not manually emailing them, right? Uh, DMs as well, right? There's all these DM campaigns, tools to automate that for the time being. And things that you can't forget. So maybe setting up an automation that looks in your CRM and says, "Oh, I haven't heard from this client in a while. I'm gonna send a follow-up email," right? Or again, paying the bill. Paying the bill is a pretty good one. It's a pretty good falls into all of these buckets. All right. So again, some examples: send an email to your mailing list when a new episode of your podcast drops, or a new blog post comes out, or a new video or live stream is happening. You can send an email automatically when all those things happen because most email service providers connect to an RSS feed, and we'll send an email based on that. Send an invoice when the contract is signed. Give access to a private podcast when someone becomes a member, or upload videos from Dropbox to Vimeo. So this is another automation that kind of saved me. Um, One weekend when I was watching my kids, I had done some educational content for my members, and the video was processing, and I forgot to upload and send it to them, and I felt bad. Like I felt like I needed to uh, let them know or deliver it to them more quickly. And it turns out I had an automation set up that uh, watched a folder on in Dropbox and uploaded it to Vimeo automatically. So I didn't have the email. Those are the words I'm looking for. I didn't have the email set up yet. But have was a link that I could easily like I get emailed saying like, "Hey, this thing got uploaded," so then I can just forward it on to my members. So that was a really good one as well. All right, so those are a few examples. Let's get into some of the technical talk stuff. Getting into the mindset, and then we'll look at some examples. So, getting into the mindset, think about this. What are the tasks you're doing that meet one of those four criteria? What is frequent and repeatable? What is infrequent but time consuming? That maybe spending 2 hours setting up an automation to save you 12 hours over a year, plus the time it takes to actually get to context switch. Like, right, what kind of tasks will fall into that bucket? What's something that needs to happen at a specific time, right? Maybe you publish new episodes every Monday at 3 a.m., right? You're not waking up at 3 a.m. to publish those episodes. Or something that you don't want to forget, right? So again, for me, it's when someone joins my membership, I want to deliver a number of their perks to them immediately, right? I want that quick win for them. So think about those things. And then you want to determine what you can automate. So we have our four buckets, right? Now let's think of these are the four, I call them the four questions. The four questions you need to ask yourself to automate or delegate. But again, we're focusing on automation here. Number one, what is everything that I do in a day, right? And if a day sounds daunting, pick a process. With my coaching clients, it's what's everything you do to publish one episode of your podcast? Skip nothing, leave no stone unturned, literally everything you do. Let's take some time and walk through it now. Understanding and having that list allows you to really take stock of everything that is on your plate for either that specific process or for everything you do in a day, right? So if it's, if you uh check your bills every morning or balance your books every morning, right? Is that something that you really need to do? Is that something QuickBooks can do for you? Is it maybe time to hire an accountant? That sort of thing. So you have your list, right? Make a list of everything you do. And then ask yourself, do I personally need to do this? More on that in a second. The third question is, does a person need to do this? Because it's one thing to say, I definitely need to do this, right? I'm the host of my podcast. I have to do that, right? In my opinion, the synthesized AI voices of me are not me yet. Um, so I need to do that. Publishing the episode, I don't have to do that. A person has to do that. Emailing my VA to let her know a new episode is ready, I don't need to do that. A person doesn't need to do that either, right? A robot can do that. So ask if a person needs to do this and then see if there's an automation tool that can do it. Again, skip nothing. You want to write down everything that you do. Review your whole routine. Write them down as if you don't know, if you can't think of something, you don't need to make the list in the next 10 minutes. Sit down at your desk. Every time you do something, write it down. Or time track, right? So you can use time tracking. If you're unsure of where to start with time tracking and you have an iPhone, they have the screen time that'll tell you every app you've been in. Macs have that now too, right? So, oh, I spent 40 minutes on YouTube today. That's generous. That's like generously low. Um, or there are other apps like Rescue Time and Timing, yeah, Timing, that will automatically log everything you're doing on your computer for you. So time track if you're unsure, but or just write it down as you're doing them, right? You want to make a list of everything that you do. Do I need to do this? The answer is probably no. I'm going to say that again for emphasis. The answer is probably no. Most people think that they can do or they need to do everything in their business. Well, this process is just so unique. It's not. It's really, really not. Or it's not so unique that only you can do it. You'll probably find that there's a tool that will do it more effectively, or there's a person who enjoys doing the task and can do it better than you. So when you ask yourself, do I need to do this? Again, the answer is probably no. Does a person need to do this? So this is a little bit more nebulous of a question, right? Because you're not, it's tough to say. Um, but are you sending data between apps? Does it require more than simple decision making? And does it require more than simple decision making? Rule of three, but I didn't have a third. Are you sending data between apps? Does it require more than simple decision making? If the answer to both of those things, if the answer to the first question is yes, and the answer to the second and third question are no, then a person probably doesn't need to do this because um, got a little ahead of myself. If you're just sending data between apps, right? Most of the time you can do that between the two apps or using Zapier to connect the two apps. And if it does not require more than simple decision making, well, automation can help you with that too. So let's look at finding the right tools. But before that, I want to tell you kind of like the four aspects of automation. So once you have a list of potential automatable tasks, you want to find the right tools to help you get the job done. Those tools are Make or Zapier, the ones that we're going to focus on today in the later half of this. Shortcuts for the iPhone, I rely heavily on shortcuts, Apple shortcuts. But Google Assistant is another automation tool, on-device automations that are crucial for interacting with apps, right? When I'm on a run, or something more believable, when I'm on a run or driving, and I can't type on my phone, I have a shortcut and I can just say, I have an idea, and I can dictate that idea to my note-taking app, right? So I can shout into the void, add to shopping list, and then say uh, one thing, new line, two thing, new line, so I can quickly kind of look in my fridge and see what needs to be added to the shopping list. That sort of stuff. Number three is Airtable, right? This is or Notion as an alternative where you store your data. Probably has some automation processes. Airtable and Notion both connect to Zapier and Make. Airtable, I can't speak to Notion. I am the only person it feels like not in Notion Nation. Um, but Airtable also has its own built-in automations, which are pretty great. That's why I love Airtable, to be honest. And then tools like Calendly and SavvyCal. These are easy ways to book, organize, and communicate with guests, but also with potential clients or current clients, right? Something that I like to do is if someone books a coaching call with me, they get automatically added to ConvertKit and tagged as coaching client, right? So now I know who all of my coaching clients are. If I have something special for them or if I want to follow up with them in 6 months, that's another thing I do, right? When they sign up for my membership or for coaching, they get added to a sequence that emails them in, I think it's 12 weeks saying, "Hey, how's it going?" Right? Since we started, I just want to check in with you. I don't have to do that. ConvertKit does that for me, but I'll respond when they respond. Right? So they get the email that's automated, but then they'll get an actual response from me. Others worth mentioning, Hazel is a app I love. I'll show that at the end if we have time. Keyboard Maestro. The thing that I used Keyboard Maestro for most recently was I recently came back to Twitter, but I wanted to I joined Twitter on April Fool's Day 2007. So I had a lot of baggage, nearly uh where am I at? 15 years or something like that, right? Of baggage um on Twitter. And so I wrote a little Keyboard Maestro script that would I went to everything Twitter thought I was interested in. You can find that link by digging. And I had it uncheck and then move the cursor down some amount of pixels, uncheck, move it down some amount of pixels, uncheck. Um, and so it had like 200 interests. Keyboard Maestro just did that for me over time, so I didn't have to sit there doing it. Bunch is not is really it's like kind of command liney. but it was worth mentioning here because it's really neat. And repurpose.io is really good for taking one piece of content and sending it to other places for other pieces of content. Okay, let's talk about the components of automation before digging into the actual like live demos and showing you some of my own automations. Um, I'll point out the 5 that I think you can probably implement today. But there are 4 components to automation. Make sure you can actually see my screen here. Okay, so there are 4 components to automation. The trigger, this is some event that's needed to kick off the entire automation. Automations won't happen without this, right? So, um, an example I like to use is from Home Alone, right? My daughter loves that movie now. Very exciting for me. I grew up watching that movie. But there's a scene where Marv and Harry are sitting in their van, and Harry is just looking at his watch, then pointing to houses, right? Saying, "Oh, there, those lights." Everybody had automatic timers to turn their Christmas lights on at a specific time. And back then, right, there was nothing syncing them to like what time is sunset, right? Because that's what I do now, right? At sunset, my Christmas lights turn on. Um, so the trigger in this uh, example was a specific time, 6:24, 5:37. Um, so that's the trigger. Then there's the action. Once an automation is triggered, one or more actions are performed. In our Home Alone example, the lights turn on. That's the one example, right? For me now, this is dumb, but on Christmas morning, um, at 6 a.m., I think it is. It probably changes based on when my kids wake up, but 6 a.m., all of the lights downstairs turn on, and my Christmas playlist also turns on. If I had an internet connected coffee maker, it would also make coffee. But multiple actions can happen based on one trigger. Conditions, right? So I mentioned simple decision making, right? So you can check for certain conditions to triggers as well. So you can say, okay, if it's 6:24 p.m. on Christmas Eve, turn on these lights, these extra lights, let's say. If it's 6:24 on December 27th, only turn on some of the lights. Something like that, right? Maybe a better example is when someone books a Calendly link for me. If they book through my podcast scheduling link, one automation, one set of actions happens. If they book through my coaching link, another set of actions happen. And then timing, you can run automations immediately or at specific intervals, right? So with Calendly, I want that to happen immediately. Someone books, I want them put in my pipeline, right? But if I'm just checking for data, so for example, I want to tweet new blog posts, that doesn't need to happen immediately. So I have it run every 3 hours, right? Otherwise, if I let's say I publish like 2 or 3 in a row or something like that, or like I publish a blog post at the same time that my podcast episode goes out, it'll check every 3 hours for the latest post and publish it. Okay, so that is all of the slides. I guess I'll pause here if any questions or comments have come in. I don't see anything on Twitter or over on YouTube, I don't think. So yeah, I don't see any questions coming in over here on Restream either. So I will continue on to the actual automation stuff. So let me get my tabs right. Don't close this one out. Here we go. Okay. So this is Zapier. You probably know Zapier. Some people say Zapier. It's Zapier, makes you happier. That's how I remember how to say it. I'm on the free plan now because I've moved over to Make completely, but I still have a bunch of my automations here. So here's a couple of good examples, right? Calendly to ConvertKit. This is the one I was just telling you about. Invitee created in Calendly. Continue only if the event type exactly matches Playbook one-on-one. So this is what my coaching program was called. Tag them in ConvertKit. Okay, so this is one part of the automation. A way that you can apply this, right, is again, if you have a scheduling link and you have a potential client who is interested in your services, you can, when they schedule a consulting call, add them to your ESP and maybe add them to a nurture sequence, right? Where it's like you have the call with them, but maybe you can send them 3 emails about who you are and what you do and who you can really help, and then a follow-up email later saying like, "Hey, thanks so much, for scheduling the call." Calendly can actually do this, where, like, you can have it send an email an hour after the end of the call. "Thanks so much for scheduling the call. I'll follow up with you. If you think of anything else, let me know," right? So there's that. Send messages in Slack are always good, right? Those are always, if you have a team and you like make a sale, like a course sale or a land of invoices paid, that's a fun one. Let's go. I'm just gonna kind of run through some of these. Blogging is fine, like right if you want to automatically publish. Um, Email capture. So there are a few really good ones here that I think can really help you, right? One is, this is what I was using for newsletter curation for a while. So I had a newsletter where I curated stuff. And I would tag items in Pocket with newsletter. And then I would grab the pertinent information, like the excerpt and the title, and then I would append it to a note in Evernote. This has since changed a little bit, right? Because the way I did it here is because Evernote accepted HTML. I could then copy and paste the entire contents of the note and paste it into ConvertKit. This has changed a little bit. I'm not doing as much curation anymore, but if you are curating, you can do something similar with Evernote or Notion or Airtable. And so these are, this is, if you're doing kind of content curation for your clients or for your audience, this is good. I would also have it create a post, which was pretty neat. Um, though it got a little bit out of hand sometimes. I would do the same thing. I would watch the RSS feed. That way, my own blog posts made it into curation, so I could tell my clients or my newsletter subscribers about the new content that I've created. Creating tasks when something's assigned to you in Asana. This one was for me because I don't really like Asana and I don't do a whole lot of team stuff. So I would have it added to my task manager of choice. Um, Email search and retrieval. This is really good. I'm actually going to bring up this spreadsheet. Can I do it here? No. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my spreadsheets. I really like this automation because I'm a little behind. But what I have, well, I'm a lot behind. That's not indicative of how behind I am. But let's just look at the last few. Um, Help a Reporter Out is a really great service that will email you with reporters who are looking for experts in their field. And so, what I do, right, and you can actually see they send 3 emails a day, but you could see like there's only entries for a couple here and there. They're not every day. Like there was 5 days between these two. I have Zapier search emails from Haro for the terms podcast or podcasting or podcaster. Now that I could simplify this, but if any of these terms show up in an email, I have it send that Gmail link and the date to this spreadsheet. That way I don't have to sift through, because like Haro emails are so long, they usually get cut off by Gmail. And so I don't have to go in and open everyone and search through everyone. Even if I'm doing a keyword search, I don't have to go through everyone as they come in. So like once a day or once every couple of days, I'll go to this spreadsheet. I will click on the link and I will look for the terms podcasting, which I know exist because uh oh, that one didn't work for some reason. Let's see. Always dangerous like showing your email. So I guess this is not gonna show. I'm just like showing my wife's email. It's fine. Oh, I see why that didn't work because I had to log into my wife's email to check something. But on a normal day, when I'm not doing this in front of other people, this will bring up the Haro email, and then I could find the contact information without having to sift through every email. So this is actually a really big time saver for me. Uh, so so this is a really good one too. This is a winning combination from Airtable. I'll show you Airtable in a minute, but this basically sends requests. It used to send it to Design Pickle. Now it sends it to my VA when I need an image created for a blog post or a podcast episode. Um, my VA will automatically get an email about that. And a lot of my automations are around this. So let me I'll check for questions again really quick. I don't see any. Sorry for that inception moment there. Let me show you the really fun ones. And then if anybody has any questions or want to see me build something out, um, let me know in the comments. So let's look at the Calendly router here. This is fun and a little complicated, and I love it. Right. So um, this is managing. Again, this is Make. I really didn't explain Make, but Make.com, formerly Integromat, is a Zapier competitor. And the reason I like Make better than Zapier is twofold. One, I think their interface is better. It's a lot nicer building these automations out because you can move stuff around more easily. Their paths make a lot, their routing makes a lot more sense. I just like it a lot better. It's also about 90% cheaper than Zapier. And like that's not something to scoff at, right? Like I get like paying for a good tool that saves you a lot of time, but if there's a tool that does the same thing for 90% cheaper, well, I mean, I'll just say like people didn't get wealthy by wasting money, right? So I think it's worth your time to check it out, especially if you're doing a lot of automation like me. So, here's a big time saver for me. This when a new Calendly request comes in, it'll grab the event, it'll check the name. If the name is how I built it, it goes through this process, which I'll touch on in a minute. If it's Playbook One on One, it's a coaching client, and so they get tagged as such in ConvertKit. But if it's how I built it, the first thing it'll do is grab all the information from Calendly and create a Google Doc that serves as our show notes. Then it will run a different make scenario. That's a little bit superfluous for this, but what this does is add the guest information to Airtable. Um, so all of their information gets added to Airtable, and I grab that record. So if the guest's name is John Smith, the Google Doc gets created. This make scenario runs and adds all of John Smith's information to Airtable. I get John Smith's record, and then I update John Smith's record with the link to the Google Doc. So what that looks like in practice is this, where I have the guests, the topic that they've presented, a link to their Google document, the date we're recording, the date it's going to go live, the potential sponsors or upcoming sponsors, and then the status, which is automatically set to scheduled. The reason that I have multiple routes here is because if people want to, well, I have guest outreach, but I also have people applying. And so if people apply, they get put someplace else. And then if they get accepted, they go through this process. So that is a huge time saver for me because I can basically send the people I'm inviting a personalized list. Again, the way that you can adopt this process for your own clients is have the Calendly link or whatever, right? Acuity scheduling or whatever. And when they book, you can ask them a few questions on the intake form, which you definitely should. And instead of a Google Doc, maybe they get added as a ClickUp page or a Notion page where you can now keep track of everything with this potential client, right? So you can automate the interactions with your CRM. And instead of having to manually input all of this stuff, because you'll forget, right? You'll forget, as I have forgotten, because we are humans and humans forget and robots don't. So this is, I think, a really good automation, not just for podcast guesting, but for relationship management, right? Um, Here's another good one. Basically, this is watching the happens to be running at this time. This is one of the ones that I only have run every couple of hours, right? But what I have this do is watch Google Docs, right? All of my content starts in Google Docs, but I don't really like Google Docs as a place, like as a repository for searching. So I add all of my content to Airtable as well. So if we look at the results of that automation, it's going to take the stuff I write in Google Docs. It's going to take the title of the episode of the document. It's going to take the content of the document and put it in here. It's going to link to the Google Doc. And then this is a place where I can manage with my VA what I've shared to social media, what I've published as a blog post, um, what where it what assets have been created for it. And then it also makes it really easy for me to search and say like, "Oh, I had an idea about like how to automate following up with a guest. Did I publish that?" And I can search for like follow up maybe, and then it'll show up, and I can see, oh, it's yes, it's been published. I also try to link to the actual post. Well, my VA links to the actual post uh, to make it easier for me to find that stuff. So if I talk about um, automation and I know I got a lot of really good comments, I can go there and get some social proof. But that is like the one place. If you're in the group, you probably know Karanda. She has her Airtable pot of gold, and that's what this process um was really inspired by. So on your end, if you have a content strategy or a content plan, right, you can create something like this for you and your team to manage, where you fire off some ideas, they get added to Airtable or Notion or ClickUp, and you have a single place for all of this content for you to share on social media or create blog posts from. Podcast guest onboarding, membership stuff is really good. Um, Sending information from shortcuts. Uh, Here's a really good one: webinar registrant. Um, I've kind of rolled my own webinar software. I didn't really like anything that existed out there, and so now when someone signs up for a webinar, they get sent to a webinar form, and this one I do have to update right every time I have a new webinar. But basically, when someone signs up for my upcoming webinar, they get invited to the Zoom. I've been using Zoom, so they get invited to the Zoom meeting. It's just a regular Zoom meeting. I'm not using Zoom webinars. I haven't really found a need for that functionality yet. And so this handles inviting them, sending them the calendar invite, sending them an email. So this really simplified my process. So again, if this is something that you're doing, right, and you want to book a call with somebody or you want to have an event with your clients, you can have your clients register via ConvertKit or Gravity Forms or Jotform or whatever, and automatically invite them to a Zoom meeting, right? Because Zoom meetings don't have that open form like uh, Zoom webinars does. This is a lot of the magic stuff for updating the statuses in Airtable. So like I told you, I told you the story about how I updated a file and then everything else kicked off. It's because I have Make, but you can also use Zapier, watching files in Dropbox, looking for the instructions file, updating the record in Airtable, and then sending the email, right? So this is for needs editing. So it looks for the instructions file. It um, then looks for the record because the instructions file has the episode number, like some unique identifier, updates the record to out for edit, and then emails my editor. And then the same thing for add to WordPress, right? This is wherever that went. When my editor adds stuff back into Dropbox, um, then my VA gets an email that the status has been updated to add to WordPress or ready for publish, right? And again, the way that you can um, adopt this, right, is if you're doing client work and you're waiting on content from them, maybe you have a shared Dropbox where they're putting assets. You can have them upload those assets, and then you get an email or the status gets updated. Very similar to kind of what like Content Snare is doing. So, um, a lot of these automations are really going to help you um, communicate better and send information more time more timely more timely timely more frequently, more reliably. There it is. So, those are some of the automations that I'm using. A lot of it's for my podcast, but you can adopt them a little bit. I could show you, uh, yeah, let me show you Hazel. I get a lot of questions about Hazel. So I'm going to switch up the view a little bit, share my screen, and just share Hazel. So um, let's see, can you see me now? Oh yeah. Okay, so I'll double check. If someone's watching there, let me know if you can see my Hazel screen and not me, because I still only see me. No, I still only see me. Can't see it, Emily is saying. Um, this is how do I'm screen Oh, there we go. Oh, sorry, Emily, I don't know if did you have to do that? Um, that's my bad. Oh, this is really nice. This looks really nice. Okay. Well, let's look at Hazel. Hazel is Mac only, so I'm really sorry, Windows users, but I love Hazel for a million reasons. Um, oh, hey, Aaron, how's it going? I'm glad you could be here. Um, so I love Hazel because Hazel manages all of the files on my computer without me ever having to touch them. So for example, here's a really common one, right? You download an installer, you install it, the app, and then the installer just sits in your downloads folder forever and ever. Amen. Um, Hazel looks for those installers and then deletes them after a day, right? It will move pictures from my downloads folder to the pictures folder. It will tag items, uh, new items that are less than I think 30 days. It'll tag them and label them blue so that I can easily find the new files. And then again, if they're older, um, yeah, 4 weeks. And they're still in the downloads folder. It'll just move them to the trash, right? This is like you can set that yourself if you're really uncomfortable, but this has been really great for me. Um, Here's all of my pre-production stuff for my podcast. Again, if you are working with contracts or other documents, right, that a client sends you, right, either via Dropbox or some other way, you can create your own rules like this. But here's what I'm using for my podcast. If the extension is a WAV file, which means it is an audio file, and it has this format for the name, which is how I built it slash some episode number slash a screen, slash a string, and my name is in it. I want it to rename that file to the episode number, which it found dash host, and then the same thing for guest, right? So if it's that file and then it doesn't contain my name, it's going to contain the guest's name. So it's going to rename it as episode number guest. Then it's going to move all of those folders into all of those files into an episode folder that's ready for pre-production. Um, when it finds when so I look for 4 files in each episode: guest, host, instructions, and intro. Once there are 4 files in a folder, it moves it to needs editing and kicks off all of those make automations I just showed you. Um, this one's really good. I use Restream, right? So this is probably going to happen for me right after this. But when I do live streams as well, right? I have Hazel looking for any Restream files, moving it to Dropbox, and then the live stream uploads folder is connected to Vimeo, so it'll automatically upload my live streams to Vimeo for my members. I also manage storage of old files, and I move my members only episodes into the right place. I create Instagram and Pinterest images, all kind of based on stuff from Hazel. So um, this has been I like this is Hazel's been a real game changer for me as far as managing files and folders And again, kicking off other automations, right? Because Dropbox sits on my computer, and when I move something into Dropbox, I can have Make watching or Zapier watching that Dropbox folder to do something else with communication, right? So, if you have a web designer, or a content editor, and you have content ready for a website or content ready for review, you can move it into ready for review, and then your copywriter gets an email or your designer gets an email. And this is stuff you don't have to worry about, right? The status can automatically get updated in ClickUp or Basecamp or whatever you're using for project management too. These are the things where you can start implementing and automating with today, and that makes me really excited. So, we have about 10 minutes. Is there anything that I said that was you need clarification on, or anything else that you'd like to see from an automation standpoint? I didn't really get into the building of automations. I will say, if I can shamelessly plug something here, um, that I am doing a 3-day automation workshop, where we actually will go through everything I just talked about. And so you'll we'll make a list of everything you just did. We'll talk about how you what things you can automate. I'll show you how to um create those automations. You'll have at least one automation by the end of day 2, and then on day 3 we're going to do hands-on stuff. So we'll create SOPs. You'll actually build automations under my guidance. You'll get the recordings, and if you do everything that we go through, you can save 10 to 12 hours per week of work. That's what I save. So, um, it's limited seating, right? Because I'm using Zoom meetings, and so I have a certain number of seats. But it's a 3-day workshop. It's 199. If you're interested, I can link that in the chat. Um, if that's okay with Emily. But it's really good. Emily's back.
Of course it's okay. I was going to say, I was waiting for a moment to come in and say, Joe, where's the link? Share the link.
Yes, the link, I can do this, right? I'm gonna open up Ecamm, one of the other little fun tools that I use, and I can
And I'll
just
make
drop it.
sure if you are watching this recording and not watching us live, I'll make sure this will be in the Facebook group on our YouTube, and we'll get it in a follow-up email too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, so that's are there any questions? Emily, is there anything, I mean, I think you know the group a little bit better than me. Are there any processes that you know? I probably should have prepped you this before when we were in the green room, but
I
is there anything that you hear, in the people in the Facebook group, or anything that troubles you?
I know that people are always interested in automating more, and I will say that I loved that you touched on being taking an editorial look at it, right? So you don't need to automate everything. You should not automate everything, but being able to identify what can be automated, how it's going to help you, and where it pays off to spend a couple hours here to save you 2 hours every week ongoing, right? Things like
Yeah.
that. There have been times I know that I know, and as I'm doing the tedious tasks every day of the week, I'm thinking to myself, why don't I just block time in my calendar, put this into an automation and forget about it? And then I finally get around to doing it, and it's, hallelujah, the sky's part, everything. It's wonderful.
It's like how you need to, like, the task that you constantly, for me, I need to fix my gate, like the latch fell off of our gate, and I know that it's gonna take me 5 minutes,
Hmm.
but I haven't done it yet, and it's been, like, 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Like, and now when my kids are playing out in the yard, instead of fixing it, I just, like, bungee the 2 gates together, right? Like, so it's like you're causing yourself an incredible amount of pain by putting it off. But, I will say, like, people see what I do, and they go, "Well, that's too complicated," right? So,
Yeah.
like, the point I really wanna drive home is automation's iterative. The things that you saw today, um, were not the first versions. right? The first version was like a two-step thing, and then I thought, "Oh, I can improve this,"
Hmm.
which is great because you're always thinking about your processes too.
Exactly. And I'll say, if you're someone who's been to our happiness hour calls when Joe has been on, we often go down rabbit holes with Joe, and he's teaching us his tricks and automations and all of that. So if you're thinking about learning more about automating or looking for someone to be your automation sensei, like honestly, Joe's the guy. I highly recommend him, and really excited to see you have that workshop going on. So I can't wait to help promote that as well, Joe. So thank you, Joe, so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. We will be back next month with Joe again. So stay tuned to find out what that topic will be. I believe it's going to be a bit more podcasting focused next month if we stay on track with what we've got planned, but subject to change. We'll confirm that at a later date. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And if you are watching this as a recording, make sure to say hi in the comments and we'll see those as well. And we will see everybody next time. Thank you, Joe.
Bye. Thank you. Have a great